Yeah. So today's topic is Dalits and crony capitalism in India. So the main theme of your refresher course in history is recent trends in economic history of India. So I have taken the post-liberalization era as such, and the history of uh, liberation, privatization, globalization, and how it is impacting each and every aspect of society, and particularly the transition of capitalism in India is very interesting, and how the this transition is impacting the Dalit as a whole, and minuscule Dalit entrepreneurship, or we'll come to next Dalit capitalism. Kindly go through this one. So, crony capitalism is a term which was uh, uh, in became in 1980s, when it was used to describe the political situation in the Philippines. So Jazz Tabor characterizes that. So crony capitalism, economic system characterized by the close relationship between business leaders and government officials. In the system, business success is heavily influenced by favoritism rather than free market competition. This can manifest in various ways. So, before understanding crony capitalism, so if we go back to the history of capitalism, so we what do you call Adam Smithian capitalism, the classical model of capitalism as such. So the capitalism, the classical model, what it argues is the market is going to influence the affairs, and the state has to be neutral in this aspect, and there should be free market forces. And how the market force, the economy is controlled is by the invisible hand. So invisible hand is something which is described as being the autonomous ways of market forces which control the supply and demand. So that is the case of classical capitalism. From classical capitalism to, we have many forms of capitalism. Mercantile capitalism, where it was basically a trading of goods and services. Then we had managerial capitalism. Then now we have reached the stage of what is being discussed nowadays is finance capitalism. So after in the finance capital system, after 1991, the crony capitalism is a buzzword or a theory that is being discussed very much across the world, not just in India. Here the crony capitalism refers to the nexus between business, politics, and bureaucracy, leading to unequal economic opportunities. So when India opened up in 1991, you see that we began the process of liberalization. So it was called the neoliberalism. The earlier for the classical liberalism is a form where the state is neutral. A state allows all the forces to work. So, okay. Okay. So classical liberalism is neutral to the state, whereas in a crony capitalism, you see that the state favors the capitalist. So here the word crony means it's a friends. So there are many types of capitalism, monopoly capitalism and other. The crony capitalism is a group of friends who control the entire economy as such. So that is how it is characterized. So crony capitalism refers to the nexus between business, politics, bureaucracy, and leading to unequal economic opportunities. So this is the broader theme of this refresher course is about socio-economic history. So I have touched upon the social aspect of the Indian society, that is Dalits. So you can see that favoritism, corruption in government contracts and licenses exists, collusion between politicians, bureaucrats, and corporate elites, and inadequate regulatory frameworks and enforcement. Fourth is the concentration of wealth and power among select groups. So the different how, but it is not that it doesn't exist in the previous type of capitalism as such, but here the groups form what do you call a friendly kind of business empires who work in tandem with each other by colluding with the politicians, bureaucrats. Next slide. Just next slide. Currently, there is some technical issue. So you can see that chronic capitalism system which close associates of the political authorities. Now, what we can say that see, in a chronic capitalism, there isn't a level playing field. So capitalism says that there is a level playing field for all the capitalists, all the entrepreneurs. So for example, if you want to start an industry, so everybody has got the equal level playing field. That means equal opportunity. But here in crony capitalism, the policies and the machinery of the state works in a way that it favors a few capitalists, those are crony, but it doesn't allow other new capitalists to come into the system, the economy or the market. So you can see that this some 15 years ago, this Aam Aadmi Party especially drew the public attention to the issue of crony capitalism. So now we come to the stage of the socio-economic aspects. So Dalit, I characterize my definition of Dalit is especially with the SCs, but the Minister of Social Justice incorporates both SC and STs. So that is my definition of Dalit, and capitalism I have defined already. So Dalit capitalism, it was an era where the Dalit intellectuals and entrepreneurs, after 1991, they saw an opportunity with the opening of the economy, the liberalization, privatization, globalization, as we call the liberalization, privatization, globalization. So what they thought was, especially Chandraban Prasad was a mentor of this ideology. So what they thought that the Dalits should be not seekers of job, but they should be givers of job. And there exists a lot of opportunities after the opening up of the economy. Instead of blaming the economic system, the liberal, the space of the state is relegated to as a marginal entity. So the more stress on the economic affairs. So Dalit capitalism has been advocated for unleashing the entrepreneurial instinct within the community and as a panacea for emancipation of Dalits. So what it argued is with the capitalism, when state is moving towards capitalism, state is no longer a socialist state. So pre 1991 India, you can say that it was a kind of a pre, it was kind of a socialist state, not exactly in a, had a mixed economy where both the public sector and private sector would function. So what this Dalit capitalist argued is the state is shrinking and the public sector space is shrinking, and it is just 1% of the economy. So 99% is more, and we have to occupy that space. And it was seen as a emancipation of Dalits, that because of this capital accumulation, the new kind of millionaires were emerging among Dalits. So they would be respected in the society, and the self-esteem, as Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had advocated, can only be gained through the economic power. So Dalit capitalism and liberalization, privatization, globalization. So recently, Milind Kamble was awarded Padma Shri by the government of India. He is a billionaire, Dalit billionaire, Milind Kamble. He founded Dalit Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, DICI. And Chandraban Prasad, as I told you earlier, is a mentor. It is an advocating for Dalit capitalism as a route for Dalit emancipation. It was founded in 2005. So, in a work by, there is an interesting work, Defying the Odds, the Rise of Dalit Entrepreneurs by Devesh Kapoor, D. Shambabu, and Chandraban Prasad, chronicles the stories of 21 such Dalits who got opportunities, who used the opportunities presented by economic reforms, and they have become successful entrepreneurs. So, but the case is not so simplistic. So here the heading is caste as a social capital. So caste is a very complex phenomena in Indian society. So the caste determines the hierarchy, and it is basically a social attempt. So that he may not be treated on par with the upper caste. So, according to research by Surinder S. Jodhka, most Dalit entrepreneurs face problems varying from difficulty in getting enough supplies and credit, lack of social networks, absence of kin groups in the business, and control of traditionally dominant business caste groups. See, here you can see that the social networks, so they are also contribute for the growth of an entrepreneur or a capitalist. So the credit for any capitalist entrepreneurs, they need credit, but the credit is impacted by the caste considerations and absence of kin groups in the business. For example, you can see that there are many family conglomerates which operate in the business, and they help each other. For example, for the same caste, say Tatas, Birlas, Godrej, the traditionally dominant business caste groups. So these traditionally dominant business caste groups, there is a kind of a nepotism in business too. They help their own community entrepreneurs to come up in business in their capitalist growth. So Dalits as such lack social capital. They are stigmatized and they are not treated on par with the upper caste. So Dalit situation is more complicated and vulnerable to homogeneous categorizations. It is very difficult to categorize Dalits as an homogeneous group or as an entity. Book on its name is Caste as Social Capital. So he advocates for Vaishnavization of Indian business. So Vaishnavization means the Baniyas. In Chaturvarna we have Brahmins, Vaishnavas, Kshatriyas and Shudras. So Vaishnavas are basically trading community. So he in that book he advocates that Vaishnavization of the Indian entrepreneurs. Especially he also advocates that all the communities, irrespective of the caste hierarchy, they should become entrepreneurs and they should become Vaishnava, like think like Baniyas. They should come up with their own ideas and they should start a business enterprise. So that is about the caste as social capital. Market economy and state. So in the previous era, before the crony capitalist state, the transition, we see that market in the classical system, the liberal system, the market will play a key role based on demand and supply. So that is a liberal era. But in a neoliberal era, here the difference is the state itself directly promotes the interest of the crony capitalists. So how it is done is, for example, earlier the losses which private companies would make and government would not siphon it off, but they were asked to pay this thing. But in a neoliberal era, we see that whatever the losses the private companies make, government is taking over. So that kind of a situation is. So Professor Sudhappa was my teacher at Masters in JNU. In an interesting article, Changing Dialectics of Dalit Aspiration, Demand for Affirmative Action. So Indian Journal of Industrial Relations. So she analyzes the Dalit aspirations in terms for a demand for affirmative action. So affirmative action, what we see is a reservation as such. But here, what she advocates is the government has to take the responsibility of promoting the interests of Dalit entrepreneurs. And state should promote the Dalit capitalists and they should give subsidies. There are many measures in which way the state has been promoting other sections. It should promote Dalits. So you can say that this is Dalit affirmative economic action. So she argues that. So Dalit capitalism claims a marking shift in the approach towards Dalit from the rights and entitlements to a stake in the economy of the country. So the stake in the economy of the country is politically what we see, or in social justice we see as a reservation. But in the same way, Dalit capitalists argue for a stake in the economy of the country because the country is progressing. The economy is progressing in a business way. So the Dalit population especially should have in the sense according to the demography, according to their representation, they should have a stake in the economy of the country, and they demand for the certain uh, uh, amount which should be kept for the promotion of Dalit entrepreneurs. If you look at the critique of Dalit capitalism, see, Dalit capitalism at the outset for a Dalit may appear to be very rosy, because if we have a Dalit billionaires or millionaires, and Dalit would see them as a model, as a role model, uh, and he sees the, and he would be respected wherever nowadays. What is the dominant way of describing the neoliberal era is money matters. So money matters. So not the caste or class matters. So that is argued. Money matters. So if Dalit has money, he'll be respected. So it is not so as simple as that. So the neoliberal thesis, the first critique is that the neoliberal thesis that liberalization would result in growth that would trickle down, ameliorating people out of poverty has not been vindicated. So the economic theory of trickle down argues that the surplus of the economic growth will ultimately trickle down to the lowest ladder. But it is not so. In the neoliberal thesis, in fact, in the liberal era also, it didn't happen. And in the neoliberal era also, it didn't happen. But neoliberals argued that with the growth of billionaires, the community would be uplifted. But that is not the case. The thesis, they argued that liberation would result in growth, would trickle down theory, ameliorate people out of poverty. So people out of poverty has not been, it is not vindicated, it is not proved. In fact, we see a large gap or a big gap emerging even after the neoliberalism, especially in the new millennium. We see that the poverty of India is uh, is the is the highest in the sense in the last thousands of years. Professor Shashi Tharoor argues that in the thousands years of poverty or disparity is not seen. We have such a kind of disparity of wealth and income. So Anand Teltumde, he studies about the impact of new economic reforms on Dalits in India. But he comes out with the conclusion that the neoliberal era or the liberal policies, privatizations and globalizations doesn't augur well for the Dalits in India. The chasm is more. Narula Smita and Martin McGowan, in the case of untouchability, the economic exclusion of Dalits in India. So Narula Smita and Martin McGowan study argues that untouchability is of great concern for the Indian society, socially also. But when you look at it from the economic angle, Dalits are more excluded. Economic exclusion of Dalits in India. The due space for Dalits is not given in this thing, in this economy. So the thing is that the capitalism is not so cannot be generalized, and it cannot be understood so simply. The nuanced analysis of capitalism says that social networks and jugaad economy contribute for the growth of capitalists. So Asif Prakash, in his study, Dalit Capital, State, Markets and Civil Society in Urban India, based on ethnographic study of 90 Dalit entrepreneurs from 13 districts located in 6 states in Middle India, Gujarat, Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan and UP. So we studied those cases. In Madhya Pradesh government, it came out with an innovative law in this regard to promote the interests of Dalit entrepreneurs. So they passed a law that 30% of the products of Dalit shall be procured by the state government. And it was kind of historic law. And you can see the analogy with the state government of Karnataka, where Karnataka government too has reserved for contracts for SC/STs to promote their growth. Next, the study shows that secure property rights do not always translate into access to formal credit. There are complex social networks that mediate relation between formal and informal sectors. So social networks, the Dalits are basically socially deprived communities. In fact, it is not just the economic aspect that influence business, but social aspects too impact the business activities of the both formal and informal sectors. So now we come to the angle of caste and class. So this has been a historic debate going on, and it is very difficult to theorize or come to conclusions about class and caste, or caste and class. So Marxists argue that caste is class, but it is not so simple. And with the arrival of neoliberal era, capital or Crony capital era or capitalism era, we thought that once a Dalit entrepreneur, a Dalit capitalist attains a stage of a billionairehood or one of the highest economic ranks of society. So what happens is if he attains, so that he's got a class angle. So he's now that way you can say that he's a bourgeoisie class, and his caste caste deprivations, caste angles will be mitigated. But that is not the true case. But in fact, it is caste is becoming more deeper and deeper. Even the class angle, class is not able to weaken the caste structure. So, but the arguments of Dalit or the intellectuals of Dalit capitalism, they presumed a simplistic relationship between caste and class, and they thought that attaining a higher class structure or higher class of the pyramid will lead to dilution of caste prejudices. India is basically it's a caste-ridden country, and it will dilute the caste prejudices, weaken the caste system. They argued, but it didn't happen so. So in India, there is a hidden apartheid. Apartheid, as you know, is a social exclusion practiced in South Africa. In India too, you can say that there is hidden apartheid. Entire villages in many Indian states remain completely segregated by caste, despite 2 decades of economic reforms in India. So Dalits and crony capitalism in India is a complex issue. So Dalits operating pre-globalization era, Dalits operating post-globalization era, 1991 to 2010 is a way, and Dalits operating in the crony capitalism. My chronicling of crony capitalism is from 2013 onwards to 2024, maybe 11 years of. So we hear everywhere in political circles or economic circles, the country is impacted by crony capitalism, especially Ambani's, Adani's, so these two are controlling the Indian economy. So here is an overview. Dalits and economic marginalization. Dalits are scheduled caste face significant economic and social exclusion in India, despite reservation affirmative action policies. So this topic is the broader theme of your course is very interesting because say it is looking at both aspects, social exclusion of the Dalits or economic exclusion of the Dalits. So this is in spite of affirmative action policies, reservation policies, or actions to promote the weaker sections called Dalit. So Dalits have limited access to education and employment opportunities, over-representation in informal, unorganized sectors, under-representation in business, entrepreneurship, and leadership positions. So we have a very few Dalit entrepreneurs in business. Very few. You can count a few. Million complaint are now some 20, 30 are Dalit businessmen are coming up. But their number is very limited. And the land ownership disparities. So in India, Dalit ownership of land is very less. Most of them are landless. There are landless laborers. And the persistent poverty and economic vulnerability. So poverty in general terms is a different one, but poverty is more evident and rampant, especially among the Dalits. And they are vulnerable economically too. So if we look at the impact on Dalits, crony capitalism exacerbates Dalit marginalizations. So Dalits are more marginalized now. Dalits are marginalized earlier. So in a capitalist era, too, Dalits were more marginalized. And it was very difficult for them to reach the higher ladder. But in crony capitalism, where the system sees to that, those who are close to the state machinery or the state system, the government, so they will get all the patronage. It's not just benefit, it's a patronage by the state patronage of crony capitalism. And even the upper caste non-Dalits, such you can say, so they don't have more space. So in that scenario, you can see that the space for Dalit is mitigating. It is shrinking. So the crony capitalism exacerbates Dalit marginalization because limited access to resources, credit, and markets, exclusion from economic decision-making processes. So if you look at the economic decision-making process, for example, budget making, and policy decisions with regard to economy, we see that the Dalits are not involved. They're not, most of the time, they're not part of the decision-making processes. So, third one is exploitation in labor market. Exploitation in labor market. So, if the Dalit labor is seen as being more exploited in the market. So, perpetuation of poverty and inequality. So, the poverty which Dalits had is being more perpetuated. Inequality is more evident, and the gap is widening. In conclusion, the promotion of Dalit entrepreneurship is part and parcel of the strategy of liberalizing Indian state to expand the support base for the liberalization agenda. The promotion of Dalit entrepreneurship is Indian state. So they are trying to involve, it is the liberalization agenda as such. And before coming to, I would like to add to one more thing that Dalit capitalism is at times compared with black capitalism. So this black capitalism of US, so black movement which started during 1960s in US. Under the leadership of Martin Luther King, they fought for the rights of the blacks, and in order to support that black progressive movement, the Nixon administration came up with the stops for the promotions of black capitalists as such. So what happened is that in fact a few blacks were benefited by the promotion of the affirmative actions of the Nixon administration in the economic aspect. But finally, the movement itself, the black movement, became very weak and it was disintegrated. So it was, you can say that it is a kind of race capitalism. So the race also determines the capitalist structure, capitalist growth, and capitalist hierarchy as such. For example, you see in most of the, if you look at the billionaires of the world, top 100 billionaires of the world, so majority will be whites. So it's kind of white capitalism. It's also sometimes characterized as white capitalism. So Dalit capitalism, it can draw from the issues of issues faced by the black capitalists, black capitalists. So there is a kind of similarity between the two, and the crony capitalist structure sees it to that they are not they ensure that the black capitalists or Dalit capitalists will not be in a position to call the shots or make crucial decisions in the economy. So this is about the crony capitalism. And in conclusion, we can see that Indian state is expanding. State is expanding, but it is expanding in a privatization way. In fact, the state is giving its space to the global powers, and especially in India, now to the domestic capitalists. So now we see that crony capitalism in India is characterized by the two business groups which control the entire economy. So even in this crony capitalist warfare, economic warfare, you can see that even Tatas and Birlas are relegated to a lower ladder. Even they had to move to, Tata had to move to UK to expand their business empire. They were investing more in UK than in India. They were just maintaining what they had. And we see that many in chronic capitalism, whatever state it becomes weak and it gives way for privatization. We see the BSNL, how BSNL was weakened and it allowed for the private companies to sell their products and make a huge profit. So in 2000, BSNL had a turnover of, if I'm not wrong, around 1 lakh crore turnover annually. But now, where does BSNL stand now? So now the economic, if you look at the economic history of India, of the present regime, it sees that service sector is open only to Ambani, and infrastructure. Service sector is for Ambanis and infrastructure is for Adanis. So see here you can see the cronyism. So what is cronyism? Is friendly capitalist. So they act in tandem with each other in mutually benefiting ways. So they had an understanding that Ambanis will take over service sectors like telecom and other, whereas Adanis will take over by the infrastructure projects like ports, then airports, this kind of. So they had these cronies. They ensured that Ambani would not interfere in infrastructure projects of this one of the Adani, and Adani would ensure that he will not interfere with the service sector of Ambani. So the economic history of India is nowadays becoming more what you can say, more disparity of wealth, income, inequality is on the rise. So if you look at the work by James Crabtree about, he calls India, the Indian economy now as billionaire Raj. So we had British Raj of the British period, as you historians know. Then after freedom, so we had a kind of Swaraj, India as an independent nation, Swaraj. Now he aptly, in my view, he aptly characterizes Indian state as India as a billionaire Raj. So rise of billionaires and how they govern the economy, polity, and even the society. So the best way to describe the present in the state as a billionaire Raj. If we come to the symbiotic relationship between the elite section among Dalits and state, not only doesn't augur well for the Dalits at the lower end of the ladder. So what it was argued that when a Dalit reaches a higher level, so the aspiration for a Dalit at a lower ladder would be to reach to his level, and he would try to reach that level, and it's a kind of an incentive for economic growth. But in the reality, in the real scenario, it didn't happen so. So the billionaire Dalits or the Dalit affluent sections are elite Dalits. They, in fact, they they excluded the lower end of the ladder, the marginalized Dalits. So they were called as are characterized as elite Dalits. So elite Dalits, in fact, maybe some may argue that they were an inspiration, but they themselves uh, are insulated from the lower end of the ladder of the Dalits. Here also you can see that inequality was rising and distance between the two is widening. So this will happen. So Dalit capitalism, we may say that, I may say that at the end of the day, it is not for the emancipation of the Dalit. The Dalit emancipation, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar argued, is through the social structure that one can attain the higher end of the ladder. So reference kindly refer to Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, to have a look at his uh, the classical liberal era or the classical capitalism and the theory of moral sentiments. It's a classic work. Then Ralph Nader, he was a billionaire businessman in US. So he was into rail coaching business. So the crony capitalism genesis is traced to that era, 1870s after. So Ralph Nader at once remarked, he said, I can buy the US government. So you see the power of the wealth. So there this capitalism, chronic capitalist structure as such began. The genesis, you can say, and also Rockefeller, the Shell company. You can refer to the books which I have already stated. So this is